Saving, it's not a finite game, it's an infinite game. You could save for tomorrow, you could save for 20 years from now.
By putting a little amount back into super in the form of salary sacrifice, it's going to do two things. A, as everyone would love, it helps our tax. It reduces our tax position. Who doesn't like saving money on tax, right?
You know what? Let me put it out there. When you say financial planning, a lot of people are scared to have these conversations.
Yes, they understand that they have superannuation, but it's something that they can't physically touch. Do I really know how it's invested? Do I really know what it's actually doing? What else is out there?
On this episode, we'll be discussing retirement and super and why it's important to review super, have any super. I'd like to welcome Dean Desoukey from Ryker Capital. Thanks for joining us, Dean.
Thanks for having me today, guys. Really appreciate it. Lovely to be here.
Who would have thought after, post-2010 that we would come together again in some way? Dean and I used to work at a bank for a few years, and we again met by chance through the industry, and now he's our go-to person when it comes to all things related to
Financial planning.
Financial planning in general. But the issue that we have is a lot of people, when you say financial planning, they automatically default, oh, I don't need insurance. Do you find that, Andrew?
Yeah, all the time. They jump straight to it. Oh, no, I don't need insurance. Yeah. It's all good. Nothing's going to happen to me. You know?
So in our industry, I believe it's as part of the meeting the client's objectives, I should say. So meeting the client's objectives is to make sure we outline their pain points. Now, one of them is super. Mm. So in a nutshell, without being biased, tell us why super is imperative, not only for 30, 40-year-olds, but the ones that are starting work now, the 16, 17-year-olds. So to tell us why super is important in your eyes.
Look, superannuation is a very powerful and important tool. The whole purpose behind it, and I'm sure everyone would understand this, is that this is going to be one of the investment vehicles that are actually going to help fund your retirement. Okay. Now, if we go based on today's figures and what things look like at the moment now, the average household income during retirement is roughly around about $50,000 a year. Okay, that's what they need is the cost of living. So the cost of living, is around about $50,000 a year. Now, the age pension is not going to give you all that. Right? There's always tends to be a gap.
The age pension will dwindle off into the sunset.
Well, look, my personal opinion. I'm not saying to you this is gospel or this is a scenario, but look, the government at the moment now is consistently pushing back the retirement age. Okay. Now, if we go back many years ago, it would have been around about 55, and then there was around about 60 for female, and so forth, and then they just keep pushing the goalposts. So it went from 60 to 65, now it's at 67, and there's current talks at the moment now to push it to 70. Now, look, I love what I do. I love helping my clients, but personally, I don't want to be working until I'm 70. So if I don't set myself up or clients don't set themselves up, then unfortunately that might end up having to be a reality for them to work to them.
From our perspective, when a client comes to us, and it's very interesting, right? We whether I'm doing my role as a broker or working on the business or even at the gym, right? You have a super conversation. I don't know how it just comes out. Yeah. It's just natural instinct. But a lot of people are scared to have these conversations. So we've implemented it in our process to have that uncomfortable conversation, which obviously then makes it easier for when you make contact with our clients. But what are you seeing now? So once the post referral, or once we've said to the client, have a chat with Dean, because we've had scenarios where our clients come to us for a home loan, and we've gone, and he was complaining about the tax. So what you do is not only super, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So he's come to us complaining tax. So we looked at his super balance, and from your key pointers, a couple of industries, supers out there who don't really fit the client's objectives, we've referred to you, and you've been able to review super and save them on costs associated, plus, which we'll get into a little later about the salary sacrifice, but you've managed to save them.
Yeah, look, I think with superannuation, there's a lot of hidden costs at times, whether it be a performance fee, a trustee levy fee. Now, if we take a step back, and the way that I like explaining it to my clients is that if we've got some money invested at the moment now and we're paying excessive amount of money on a fee side of things, then naturally that's going to hinder your overall growth at retirement. Okay. In that sense, you could basically say the super fund is bleeding. We're not really setting ourselves up for success, and we'll not be able to really push it to where it should be. Okay. Now, but it's not just the fee side of things as well. It's even the investment structure, because that's obviously going to be the most important aspect of the super side of things, because that's what's actually going to help the super to grow. Some of the exercises that I've done with my clients is reviewing the supers. Let's make sure that they're not paying too much on the fee side of things, because if they do, it's obviously going to affect their long-term growth. And also as well, what do the investments look like? Are they up to par? How is it actually physically being invested? Are they actually investing money in places where they should be? There's been a lot of controversy in the industry at the moment now with investment side of things with super funds. But by just doing that simple exercise, by just pretty much reviewing the fees, looking at the investment structures, and doing some modeling for clients, I'm seeing on average anywhere between a $70,000 increase at retirement to the largest I've seen was around about $700,000. And that's power. That's very, very powerful.
But are people open to ideas? People look at super as their safeguard. Hey, I'm getting my 11.5% now, is it?
Yeah.
I'm getting my 11.5% paid. I mean, I, for one, have just got my super sitting there. I don't do much. Andrew uses his super to work for him.
Yeah, I've set up a self-managed super fund. It's inside CBUS. So I've invested in ETF shares, down on some, up on some, but I've essentially taken control of my own super.
Now, you may not recommend that for everybody.
No,
but where you,
yeah.
because that you've got to micromanage that. You can't be reactive to it, right?
Correct.
You've got to be really proactive. How often would you review your super? We know the why.
Do you know what, Gabriel? I'll turn around and ask you that question. When was the last time you actually reviewed your super?
When my super merged with another super.
And
so
that was...
I don't review it as religiously as I should. However, I know where it is. I know the costs associated with it. Have I really invested time in it? I should. I should. And that's the purpose of this conversation is, again, we all want to be wealthy in some way or form, right? But we don't know the purpose. We don't know why.
Look,
this is the reason why we're having this discussion, because no, I don't do it religiously, and I should.
But the thing is, and what I see on a regular basis is that people see, and one of the biggest pain points within the industry now is the fact that people see that, yes, they understand that they have superannuation. There's super there, but it's something that they can't physically touch. It's something that literally just sits in the background. So people just have it there on the back of their mind. It's just like, okay, well, that's fine. That's just going to sit there. You know what I mean? Do I really know how it's invested? Do I really know what it's actually doing? Do I really know the fees that I'm paying? What else is out there?
Because there's different,
and it's
different steps to
correct,
and investment.
And what we've look, I remember I had a meeting recently where I had a client that actually she had multiple funds. Right? Now, the idea with her, and I just said to her, look, you understand that you've got multiple funds, you've got one employer paying into the one fund, but the other one is just sitting there, it's being eaten by fees, and it's pretty much going to end up dwindling away. Now, a lot of the time, the feedback that I get from clients is, it's just all too hard. I can't do it. It's just all too hard. I've tried to manage it myself. I've tried to play around with it myself, but sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming for people. Now, someone like Andrew is in the industry, he understands about it. That's fine. He can do that, right? But some other people, just generally speaking, it just a lot of the time, it can be more of a very complex structure. So people just put it on the back burner. And it's alarming and scary because when I go back and I was explaining to you the scenario where I had to, anywhere when we do those modeling side of things, we've got anywhere between a $70,000 increase at retirement to the maximum of $700,000. Can you guess why that 700 was so big?
Retirement fees and the wrong investment strategy.
That was definitely part of it, but it's because the reason why it was at 700 was because that client was very young. So he started at a younger age.
Okay.
And time, unfortunately, always works against us, unfortunately. But the sooner that you get on top of these little things, it will make a massive difference for your overall financial well-being in the long term.
It's interesting. You know, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of people are poor savers. Because this is going to take us to segue into the next conversation. A lot of people are poor savers. Saving doesn't necessarily, it's not a finite game. It's an infinite game saving. So you could save for tomorrow, or you could save for 20 years from now. If you're anything like our, older generation, they save for their funerals, right? Salary sacrificing has its perks, has its benefits. It's all part of the review side of things, right? How and why would salary sacrifice, at what point would you consider salary sacrificing, and why would you consider it?
Look, I think at the end of the day, every single person's circumstances is different. Now, there's different purposes on salary sacrifice. Without getting a little bit too technical, but when you start to transition to retirement and you're in that later stages of your working career, then we can start salary sacrificing a larger component into your super, because it helps from a tax perspective, super balance and so forth. But even whilst you're a little bit younger as well, by putting a little amount back into super in the form of salary sacrifice, it's going to do two things. Now, A, as everyone would love, it helps our tax. It reduces our tax position. Who doesn't like saving money on tax, right?
You're not wrong.
But also at the same time as well, what happens is, going back, this little bit of increments of money that we're putting in, it's going to be something that you're not even financially going to feel. And at the same time as well, that gets invested and it starts getting compound for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
So if you it's hard off the cuff from a modelling perspective. If you were to, so what you're saying is, if on $1,000 a year, what's the average return?
Depends.
Would you say 5% average or more?
Oh, look at it. Ultimately depends on what stage. Well, you could say anywhere between around about 6.5% to 8%.
So then, $1,000 a year over 20 years at 6% on average. It all adds up. That percent-wise is free money, because you're saving money that you. And the biggest sticking point for tax is self-employed.
Yes.
Now, when you're PAYG, it's easy to salary sacrifice. You can set that up with your banking. We know it reduces your total taxable income, and you pay 15%, correct? Yep. How would you I know we're skipping conversations, it'll come back, but your self-employed customers, it's their bugbear, tax.
Correct.
Right? Ideal scenario, we get a client who's paying anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 in tax a year. Someone like yourself was to come in. How could you help a self-employed who's open to ideas? How could you help? What recommendations could you make on that scenario?
Look,
it's very general.
It's very general.
Very
general advice. Depending on the circumstances, goals, objectives, and all that type of stuff, it varies.
And we're talking about ideas here rather than
I've got any specific advice.
Fixed remuneration or savings. Yeah.
Correct. But look, a lot of the time, and this is actually a big shame, because as time progresses, the more self-employed clients that I see, it goes back to exactly what you're saying. They've got close to bare minimal or nothing within super, right? Now, everyone keeps saying to me, I'm investing in my business, which is important, and I get and I understand and I appreciate, right? But at the same time as well, why would I take a little bit of extra income, whether that be for the business, whether for myself financially, and pay 20, 30 to 40 cents in the dollar for that?
That's one of your bugbears. Yep.
Why? If I can then restructure things, put that, whether it's within super or anything like that, but put it into super, and then that's going to be invested, that's going to earn a return, and that's going to start compounding, and now I'm going to have another asset in the background. Now, the other thing as well is that a lot of people, I'm not sure if they understand or they don't know this, but superannuation is such a tax-effective environment, especially when you come to retire. Very, very tax effective. Now, a lot of people may know this, they may not, but once you're over the age of 60 and you've decided to retire, or you've taken an income out of it and you're no longer working, you can then receive, whether it be an investment income, whether it's you've got property in there that you've sold, but now you've got a complete tax-free investment structure in the disposal of your hands. Okay? What other tax-free investment structures are there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for self-employed customers in particular is it's not tangible. They can't touch it. They can't just transfer it out of their super. And until such time that, like the first home loan deposit scheme, which is a topic for another day altogether, whereas if you signed up to go, yeah, I'll put away and I can pull out a certain amount after a certain amount of years, but that's never going to happen. We get that. But I think the strategy behind the savings is there. It's just opening people up to that idea. So what we're trying to get at is reviewing super is important, but there's other strategies in place that you're able to put together.
Correct.
To help save money.
Yeah, but look, going back to the self-employed point as well, because it's something I wanted to touch up on as well, is once again, superannuation, especially coming down to self-employed, we've set things up like this and we've seen it work quite successfully. You might be self-employed, you might be operating with an office. Now, what about the idea of utilising some of your super savings to end up purchasing that property within the office that you're operating out of? Now, you've set up something in a tax-effective manner because it sits within the super umbrella. And at the same time as well, you're putting some money back in there. And once again, you're building an asset in the background. Now, if you buy that property within your personal name, when you come to sell it, there's the capital gains tax implications. If there's no debt, there's income tax implications. And this comes back down to the point where then we've just created a bigger tax problem in that situation, right? There are other ways and other vehicles that people can utilize to make sure that they're still being able to buy the asset, business can still grow, they're still investing in their business ultimately, with having things structured in more of a tax-friendly way.
I just have to get people.
Well, you may as well pay off your office than someone else's office.
Well, yeah.
Correct.
Through the capital money.
So you're getting a long-term asset, and the short-term, you're getting the savings associated with putting the money into super.
Correct.
It's just shifting that mindset. Right, so I've seen it with the generations in my family whereby super wasn't really imperative if you were self-employed. Again, I'm putting all the money back into the business. Well, there's not enough money there, so I'll use that money to, fund A, B, C, wherever I'm about. The truck's broken down, or the ute that I use for work is broken down. So, lucky I didn't put into super. Probably the wrong mindset to have.
Just regarding deposit as well. So if you were needing to put a bigger deposit down to purchase the office, you can go back 5 years for non-contributions.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So
that 27.5, I think it's up to 30 grand now, but obviously what it was at the time of it.
Correct. So look, what the government introduced a couple of years ago was something called a catch-up contribution. Now, what that ultimately means is that you can make a contribution in the form of a catch-up. So out of the last 5 financial years that you've missed any of your super contribution caps, you can then go back and make that contribution of the difference and then claim that as a full tax deduction, right? Now, what I'd say is everyone don't run out and go do that now, right? So once again, it's very important to go and seek advice around that to make sure you don't go over the caps. But yeah, once again, that's just another simple idea of ways to try and do the two together.
Well, especially if you've got the money there in the company and you want to go buy it in your personal name, why pay 45 cents on the dollar or 30 cents on the dollar when you can pay 15 cents on the dollar?
Yeah, because what people don't realise as well.
You can go back that 5 years.
But what people don't realise as well, once you own that asset and you decide I'm retiring, I'm selling the business, that property can then be leased out.
Correct.
So it's not a loss. It's not like a house, right? It's not. And I me personally would prefer to invest within super for a commercial asset rather than a residential. That's just my thought process. Agree to disagree?
Yeah. Depending on the person, depending on their goals, objectives, aspirations, what they're looking at doing. Personally, if you ask me personally, it makes more sense on the commercial side, but it obviously all depends on the numbers, you could pretty much say. A lot of the time where we look at personal residential property, if we look at the growth rates, we look at the rental yield and the income, there really tends to be that much there. But once again, it just, maybe you might be lucky buying a property that's giving you a 10% yield every year, which is the rental income's giving you a 10% return every year. Yeah, maybe that might make more sense. But it just depends on the situation, I guess.
My biggest bugbear as well. So we've established the more assets you gain now within super, whether it's a cash contribution or it's bricks and mortar, is self-employed not having adequate protection in the event of injury. They don't realize how much of a detriment that can be to the business. Some of our business owners some business owners are very narrow-minded and believe they're invincible. And the interesting part is when you tell somebody, what insurances do you have to protect you? Oh, I've got workers' comp, I don't need it.
Okay.
But
I've heard that too many times.
Yeah. So when you really nail it down to them and you go, right, but let's just say you're the key man in the business, key person in the business. And they're like, yeah. And I'm going, well, I use the truck. I don't know why trucks all this thing. You're on a job site and you break your leg. Yeah. You've just told me you're the key man. Yeah. Well, who takes your job? Oh, just close the business, get a workers' comp. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. Workers' comp affects you long term.
Correct.
Right? Your premiums are astronomical if you claim workers' comp. Key man insurance.
Yeah, it's something very important. Look, I've had the conversation a lot with clients, and I've seen. Look, one of the merits in my role is I've been able to set clients up for success and see when something like that happens and how that protection strategy has actually helped them. But also, unfortunately, as well, I've also been placed in situations where I've seen clients to say that, hey, look, I don't need anything. I'm fantastic, and unfortunately, something happens down the track. And I'll give you a bit of a most recent scenario that I'm dealing with, where I had a client. It was in the construction game. He was pretty fit, pretty healthy, and was making really good money. He was making around about $8 grand a week. So, mate, he purchased over $2.3 million house, and life was amazing for him. Now he has been diagnosed with cancer. Self-employed, he's a key person within the business, and as he's focusing on his health, as he should, right? Getting chemo, getting treatment, he hasn't been working. You know, on a over $2 million property, we can only imagine what the repayments are. Now he's around about two months behind, and he's struggling. So I'm trying to help him with a few things.
And that ugly cancer word, having that diagnosis is worse. But what's even far worse than that is not being able to fulfill your commitments.
Correct. Just the added layer of issues.
And it is. And the emotional toll and the mental toll it takes on an individual battling that ugly disease in itself takes you away from everyday activities. Like, you're overly concerned about your health, but you're overly concerned with how you're going to make the next mortgage repayment. So for me, key man insurance is imperative in the event that, so correct me if I'm wrong, had he had the correct insurances in place and he had gone down, as he did, he would have been able to replace somebody like for like within the business and potentially still been able to pay himself a wage to sustain the losses. But factoring in, he would have had to show the insurance provider his income. So really, cash is not king. But if you're earning $7 to $8 grand cash a week, and you're not declaring any of that, well, then you can't cover for anything. But if it's transactional, then yes. So I don't know. It's a really touchy conversation, that, because when you talk to people about it and you draw the map and you sort of tell people, you know, you've got 2 kids and you've got a house and, you know, you've got 2 houses and you're holidaying regularly and you've got a nice fancy car. And when you start Xing them all out, reality sinks in, but they just don't take it as seriously.
No, but I think one of the conversation starters that I use, and I've been using this for many years, is you could earn $80,000 a year, you could be earning $1 million a year. But the real way to really unpack and understand the importance of something like this is after you've covered all your expenses, after you've covered all your bills, how much of that are you actually saving?
And if you were to tell a business owner, they'd probably say to you, I can't save.
Which means if that income drops, what implications will that have on their business? Not only their business, but what implications would that have on their livelihood?
On that livelihood, a lot of people question us, who pays for my insurances? Do you get that? How do I pay?
Yeah, they think they've got to come up with it.
But some of it can be subsidised via super.
Yeah.
And it's a tax reduction for the business.
So look, depending on the insurance, depending on the structure, the way that it's all structured, you could potentially structure it within the super fund, and obviously the super can cover a lot of the costs. And a lot of people, I'm not sure if they know this, but when we structure insurance inside super, you end up receiving a 15% rebate because the super fund will claim it as a tax deduction.
Okay.
Right? So you only pay 85% of the premium, so it's a lot more cost effective. And at the same time as well, you've got something in place, it's not bleeding your back pocket, and we can structure it for you in a way that you can then claim a tax deduction.
I was sold on this insurance thing back in 2005, 6.
Time flies when you're having fun, eh?
100%. but it's important. It became more relevant after kids. You know, you think you're invincible prior to kids. Oh, I don't care what happens. But then when, kids come along, and I'll say it straight, I've told clients you're selfish because they're not thinking of the people they're leaving behind. They're just, I won't be here, I don't care. You can't think like that. I mean, your business is putting food on the table. So to turn around and go, no, I'm not interested.
It's harsh.
I scratch my head. Really, I do. I can't.
The other problem is, I guess, every 20 to 40-year-old thinks they're Superman. And nothing's going to happen to them. And if it does happen, it's too late.
That's a problem, yeah.
I've had personal experience where we've had a family member pass and the question was raised, why don't you get insurances? Like, it's imperative. These are the reasons why. And it's just like, nope. And, unforeseen circumstances happen and couldn't get cover.
I guess the big thing is as well, they're already paying for it, aren't they?
Correct, yeah. 90% of the time, people have insurances already within the super. So do they know what we're paying for? Do they know whether they're physically covered?
Let me put it out there. Everybody gets some form of default insurance within the super.
Correct.
That you're paying anywhere from $5 to $50 a month.
Unless you've opted out of it.
I understand, but how many times, having worked inside banks, how many times have you been told, would you like to opt out? No, it's just set up and roll nosy along. But their medical condition is assessed upon their claim. So if they're paying $1,000, hypothetically, a year in insurances, and it's happened with a client of mine where he's gone in and gone, I've got tongue cancer, right? They looked at it and they said, nope, declined. And he's going, what do you mean declined? And they've gone, yeah, you didn't tell us you had a pre-existing condition. Sorry. So it's a default. So have you in your time seen something paid out through their super insurance and their super?
No, look, a lot of the time it is a lot more challenging. It is a lot more challenging. There has been instances where it's a lot more serious, where they've paid out, but when it's not as serious, for them to do a payout within the super fund can be quite challenging. Hence why I always recommend to clients, if they've got any cover out, if we've got cover, we're paying for it. The most important thing we need to make sure is that in the event of the claim, the money will actually be paid out, just so they don't have the same experience that your client had.
But how many people actually review their super? I know none of my clients do. And I've honestly, hundreds of clients on an annual basis, and nobody has said, yeah, I've looked at my super, I'm covered.
Because it never happens.
They don't. Look, could you imagine having a conversation with somebody and they turn around and go, yeah, no, I'm sweet. I've rang my super and told them about my medical condition. They've said, yeah, no worries, you're still covered. We've assessed it. That puts a lot of strain on family.
It does. Look, And I'm sure you would have seen it as well. If unfortunately, if anything does happen to anyone, whether it be the main income earner, either the husband or wife, whatever the situation, or even you don't have to physically be married, right? You could be living on your own, you still got financial expectations, and then if you've cut down and you're not able to work, then it does put a massive financial burden on your shoulders. And during that time as well, the crazy part is as well is the fact that, okay, well, you've just experienced this traumatic event. Whatever the situation is, you should be focusing on getting back to where you want to, back to your health, not focusing, okay, well, what am I going to do with the next month's mortgage repayment? That in reality, that will actually hinder your recovery.
I touched on it before. 100% agree. I was told the other day, I bumped into a friend and she was saying that her personal trainer was 71, fit as a fiddle, marathon runner. He did every single check except for the bowel cancer check, and he passed away from
Wow. That's crazy.
Again, we're fit. I'm running marathons, but
yeah, wow.
you know, it's a head, again, I've said this 20 times, it's a head scratcher because you've explained the reasons why you should review super.
Mm.
We see the importance of reviewing super, but the protection piece is massive in my eyes.
Look, one of the examples that I always like using as well is I love asking this question to clients too because it always gets some questioning. But if, generally speaking, if you ask a client or you ask any person what your most important and valuable asset is, they will give you everything and anything under the sun apart from what the reality actually is. They'll say to you their house, their cars, their properties, right? But what these people fail to understand is there's only one thing that's enabling all that, and that is your ability to earn your income. If you can't work,
You need something to fund all those.
correct, everything will fall apart.
It's the same analogy that I like to use. Some people are keen, avid watch collectors.
Mm.
You can go buy yourself a very expensive Rolex, and I could go buy myself a G-Shock. They both
Good
have
watch.
they both have the same thing in common. One looks better, couldn't agree more. Right? So I guess the moral of the story is, doesn't matter what it looks like, you got to value time.
Definitely.
And that's why we're trying to put it all together. So Dean, what you're telling us out of all this is, in a nutshell, review super as often as possible. There's no real time constraint.
Correct.
3 months, 6 months. Review it as often as possible. With respect to your super, insurances within your super, really understand what you're covered for and seek advice in the event that you have any questions. The protection strategy is imperative. Again, think about the why to wealth. It's imperative. People don't. And really, the most valuable asset is long term. How are you going to put food on the table?
Correct.
Thank you for your time, Dean.
Thanks for having me today, guys. Really appreciate it.
And we'll have you out again sometime.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.